Hello and welcome to another episode of the Modern Practical Guide to a Positive Full Life Now with your host, your go-to friend, which is me. Now, today we're going to talk about money and check out the video where I define a lot of the terms I'm going to be talking about just in case you don't understand certain things. Now, just a disclaimer, this isn't technically financial advice. I can't really tell you what to do, and mainly because I'm not a financial planner, but I do see a big need, and I have a lot of people ask me about it. And so, I mean, the main issue is I don't know what your specific problem is, so I can't give you the best advice in reference to what the solution is. So it's best for you to come up with it on your own because you know your situation best. This guide should help you get started and to guide you along in this process. Now, to begin, things to keep in mind, this isn't a get-rich scheme. I don't believe they exist. I see them, get-rich schemes are like the lottery. You can play them and you might win. And don't get me wrong, I play maybe once or twice a year. But the way I see it, it's like gambling, I guess, where you're paying for the experience, but I don't expect to win. Um, because it's just not realistic. The wealthy people in this world make money by investing their money, and there are smart ways of doing it, and the lottery isn't one of those. Now, if you disagree with me, that's okay. Now, let me start off by saying money is not going to make you rich, but I do understand that money will give you happiness to a certain level where you have a roof over your head, you're eating, and you have everything you need. And that's going to be dependent on where you live due to the cost of living. So it is important. Things I would recommend in addition to what I'm going to tell you is try to find a mentor, someone you look up to financially, and try to see what they're doing and try to talk to them about it. The more you have a better positive example, the more you're going to find that you're being held accountable and you're going to take responsibility, and you're also going to have a guide there to help you along the way, especially if they've done it before. Other thing is understand why you want to do this. Understanding your motives are going to be very important to keep you motivated and get you to the finish line. So understand why you're doing it. Ideally, set goals based on what your principles or ideals are, or what your long-term goals are. Do figure that out, and then you'll be able to set smaller goals, which will pertain to the stuff we're doing here. Set rules. I highly suggest setting rules for yourself because the world is unexpected and things will happen that aren't going to be what you expect. And so if you have a rule, you'll know how to roll with it. The main secret here that I'm going to be telling you is percentages. It's about planning and setting percentages and holding yourself accountable, setting deadlines for these smaller steps, and actually filling them out. So I'm going to focus on 3 ranges. Now, I do understand that there's other ranges. For example, there's going to be a range, and I'm not going to talk about it, someone who's in debt and kind of going under. I suggest that you talk to a financial planner. There's actually free ones you can talk to that are nonprofits that can help you get out of there, so definitely do that. What I'm going to be addressing now is people who are in debt and okay, but they'd like to be in a better place. Now, let me start off by saying, you should figure out what the interest is. You should figure out your situation. What is the interest that you're paying on your loan? And can you consolidate them? Can you move them and try to make that interest rate lower? Now, if you do have investments and the rate is, of your loan is 1 or 2%, that's relatively good. So maybe it's good to have that loan, or maybe you had to get ahead. I'm not going to make any judgments. You have the loan. Figure out what the percentage is so you know where you want to be. Now, like I said, if it's 1 or 2%, then just pay it off as you will. But if it's 20%, then you want to pay it off as much as possible. And we're going to focus on that by setting percentages and planning ahead. Now, breaking down an example in reference to percentages, this is where the meat of it is. So let's say your home or your rent or your mortgage is 20%, transportation 15%. Now, these are all examples. Your food maybe 10%, taxes 20%, your bills 10%, and then your debt, which is maybe 10%. And then healthcare is maybe 5%. Now, this is an example, but setting these percentages are going to be very good because then you know what's left. You have about 20% left. So what can you do with this 20%? You want to try to fit it in. Now, if you live in LA, that percentage might be higher. If you live somewhere in the Midwest, that percentage of your rent is going to be lower. So it's going to vary, okay? Now, check your credit card, check your bank statements to get a really good idea. Now, this is going to be pertaining to every range, so I'm not going to go over it again, but understand that this goes for anybody. Now, if you're struggling to keep track, then pay everything in cash and figure it out so you can really see where you're spending. Ideally, you should be able to do off statements. And like I said, folks, see if the debt is good or bad. And again, watch the other video in defining what that is. But what you want to be focused on here is trying to focus on a fund for a rainy day. That's 5%, just in case stuff happens. Stuff happens, and it's better to have that money. If you get sick, if your car breaks down, you have that money saved up and you can put it there. The other thing I'm going to say is put 5% towards having fun, buying that thing you wanted to buy. But it's going to give you a realistic thing. You maybe not buy the 60-inch plasma screen. Maybe buy something smaller because you haven't saved enough. It's only 5%. Or taking a vacation with that money, whatever it is, but setting that money aside so that you have something to look forward to. And the last bit is that 10%. Now, if you have bad debt, put it all towards that. If you don't, then maybe start saving. Something small, like a small savings account in a bank. And that, at the very least, you're not going to be suffering from inflation. You're not going to be burning that money. And if you want to go a little further, maybe look at a CD. If you think a CD is pretty much an investment in which you're putting your money away, it's going to give you higher percentiles in the saving account, but you're going to get dinged if you take it out early, so it's different time there. Or look at a government bond. It's similar, but you don't. It's with the government pretty much. Now the next category I'm going to talk about is you don't have any debt, but you don't have much of savings or anything of that sort. And in this situation, again, do all the things I said. Figure out your percentages. Figure out where you're at, but focus on savings in this situation. If you don't have debt, then focus on your savings, and maybe look at looking at an opportunity of getting debt if you're trying to open a business, do something. If it makes sense and the debt is very low, then maybe it makes sense. Again, I tend to not go that direction, but it might be best for you. I don't know. Like I said, if you're only paying 1 or 2% on your loan and you have an investment that can give you, 5-10%, then maybe that's a good thing for you. But what you start focusing here is with that savings, it's focusing on your 401k, maxing out, figuring out if you work for a company, how much do they match? If they match 5%, make sure you're hitting that 5%. If they match 10%, make sure you're maxing at 10%. It's rare, but figure it out. It's better to know. And if they're not, then put in whatever makes sense to you, and maybe focus on a Roth account. And max out the Roth account. It's $5,500, so that should be a good amount for you to be able to aim to max it out. Now, if you want to know what to do with that money that you're putting in the Roth account and the 401k, my suggestion would be to look at a mutual fund or an ETF. And these things will be tracking the general growth of the market. Or we'll have a target date. So if you want to retire in 50 years and 40 years, you pick a year and they just pretty much track everything for you. This is going to be most people. It's just easy. You put it in. You don't have to think about it. It reinvests the money you make back into that account, and it just keeps it until it's time for it to go for you to retire pretty much. Again, also focus on 5% on a rainy day. Focus on a 5% fun or vacation fund, whatever you want to call it, whatever you're looking forward to. Do that breakdown and look at those statements to have a good idea, a realistic idea. And what you should be doing is focusing when you into the mutual funds, the ETF, the savings, and that investment for your retirement. Now, if you have a savings and you're doing the 401k and you're doing your Roth account, and you don't have any debt, then you're in this next category, which very good for you, right? You probably don't have any debt or only good debt, and at this point you're going to be focused on investments, because maybe you can't, your company, cuts it off at 10%. You already put in 10%. You already put $5,500 in your Roth account, so this extra money you can put into a trading account, and you could then it's up to you in reference to how much risk you are. I wouldn't recommend buying individual stocks because they go up and down. But what you can do is deviate from buying a target date to buying a mutual fund target date to buying something that is something you're interested in. For example, for me, I was interested in green energy, and so I bought an ETF that specifically tracks green energy. I didn't buy individual companies. All I do is I buy that ETF, and that just means it's like a stock, but I don't have to pay the mutual fund trading, and it's a little different, but it lets you track that. Now, unfortunately here, it's not going to change my investment as I retire. You see the difference? You're going to have to track that. You're going to maybe take it out once you want to have more safer investments, depending on what you're investing in. If you're investing in something quite volatile, then you're going to want to do it earlier than later. But it's up to you. But again, it's about understanding where you stand, what makes sense for you, and then making those investments. Now, don't be scared. Like I said, hopefully this definition video helps you understand all these aspects. If you have any questions, post them and I'll try to address them specifically. But like I said, it's mainly about understanding where you stand, understanding whether you have good or bad debt, then making choices in which you set the percentiles and you follow them. You don't go, you know what I mean? The main emphasis here is if the fund you want to use for coffee, great. But if you don't first, a lot of people, what they do is they're like, okay, I have bills, I have house, I do all the percentages I said. But when it comes to the last bit, they say, okay, and I spend this much on coffee, going to Starbucks or wherever it might be, right? I go eat out, at so and so every so often, blah blah. That's fine, but you need to put that at the end. You need to first do savings, first do the investment, or first do retirement. And then out of the fund, you can put in money into there and say, okay, that means I'm only going to put in 3% towards, that Apple Watch or whatever it might be to trying to get there because I'm spending 2% on coffee or I'm spending 2% on eating out. You need to understand that. And sometimes you got to make sacrifice and say, well, I'm going to have to make coffee at home. But look at it that way. Don't first put in the things you can take out. Just think about it this way, in the sense of, if you can live without it, you're not going to, be hurting yourself, then you should be able to find a way to do it more cheaply or take it out entirely. That's the main idea behind this. If you follow the percentages, you hold yourself accountable. The thing is, some people are really bad at it. They do all this and then they're just like, oh, I missed it, too bad. Tell other people. That's why I suggest another part, a mentor, telling someone, anybody, be like, this is my plan. Your partner, whoever you live with, this is the plan. And then, holding yourself accountable and be like, I failed, or I'm going to do this by this date instead. Setting small steps so you get to where you want to get to. Now, there is a fifth range. I'm not going to talk about it, but it's people that are wealthy. And honestly, if you're in that category, you can hire someone to do all this for you. My main thing is to try to help people who can't do that, or maybe aren't at a point that they understand that they should be doing that. But most wealthy people are not in that situation. So again, the quick and easy of it is just make sound choices with your money and understand where it's going. A lot of times we're like, what? I didn't know I spent that much on this or that. It's just crazy. And you sit down, you look at your bank statement, and you add it all up, or eating out, or whatever it is. And maybe you hate cooking, but maybe it's worth starting off and cooking once a day, for yourself, or something of the sort. Maybe you dislike the way you make coffee, so try to get better. Try to figure out a way where you can lessen your costs, because the thing is, I remember somebody told me something, a very wealthy individual told me, live as poorly as possible for as long as you can. Because the moment you start living up life, it's hard to go backwards. Once you start enjoying the car, or once you start enjoying the coffee or eating out, it's hard to go backwards. And I know this and I understand this, but believe me, you're going to be better financially. And it's harder, especially in the beginning, because you're finally making money, you think you deserve it. But understand, $100 you invest when you're young is 10 times more powerful than $100 you invest when you're older and have a lot of income to potentially put towards saving. That's the key here. We want to get to compound interest. When you invest early and you do this early on, so there's no better time than now. Do this now. Figure this out now. Don't do it tomorrow. Don't do it next month. Do it now, no matter how small. Even if you say, I'm going to put away $5 a month, it doesn't matter. $1. You need to do it now. That dollar is $100, in the future. So do it now. Invest that money. Compound interest is where you want to get to. It's where the secret of making money is. There's no magical wand. It's just hard earned work. You don't go out, you don't drink coffee, you invest that money early when it really hurts, and then later you have a lot of money to retire earlier, to do what you want to do, or just be financially sound. Because again, money's not going to make you happy, but you don't want it bringing you down and stressing you out. That's probably one of the longer videos, but I know a lot of people this helps, and so I just want to make sure I put it out there. And again, if you have specific questions, please comment. Follow us on social media at Colton Vita, means motivating life. And if it helped you or you think it might help someone, please forward it along. And thanks for watching.